but I'm going to give you a lot of information. And so just like any machine, and this is a machine that works in tolerances of 1,000th of an inch in some places. It's also a machine which uses leverage, and so the leverage amplifies motion. In this case, for every amount that the front of the key might deviate, it's going to amplify that 6 times. So that means that if the front of the key is off by a 32nd of an inch, something inside is going to be off by 6 or 3/16 of an inch. So because it's a very finely regulated machine, and it's built of wood mostly, the plate gives it rigidity, but years of expansion, contraction, contraction. So you have something that has tolerances of 1,000ths of an inch, and that wood is changing constantly. And so you can buy a piano brand new and have it perfect. Sit it off to the side and just normal, and just like a car, just like any machine, it's going to change. And so this one has changed. And so what we have is a Yamaha built in Indonesia, not built in Hamamatsu. So that's the first thing to remember. Hamamatsu, generally when you go looking for a Yamaha, if you want to find one that's made in Hamamatsu, Japan, because those have more value. This one built in Indonesia, it's going to have a little less value. Smaller, so has a little less value because smaller grand built in Indonesia. So the first thing I want to show you is, this, have you ever seen one of those science fair things that kids do? It's got like the planks where they roll a ball and then it goes down and a piece of toast pops up and then the ball goes down, ping pong ball, okay. So kind of a Rube Goldberg kind of a, well, imagine a piano is kind of like that, but much more sophisticated and shrunk down to a much smaller area. With it's a system of levers and gears. You wouldn't think gears because there are no like cogs, but there are leather rollers, and then there are jacks which move like this. Right. So it's a system of levers and gears, and so all of that has to, that the timing of all that, but when you press down a key, there are so many things happening inside there, and boy, there are like a dozen different things that have to happen with world-class precision in that span of time. Right? Okay. So the whole thing is, there are springs through the whole thing. All these springs, in order for it to really do what it's supposed to do, everything has to be just so right there. Okay, so first thing I want to show you, I'm going to take this one. What I'm going to do is a swing test. A swing test is a really accurate way of showing me how many grams of friction are on that center pin. The whole thing, this whole action is put together with center pins. And that's a little pin that goes through this bushing here. And these pins have to be really precise because the whipping is set on a spring. And so this pin, if it has too much friction, it won't be loose enough to move properly, and you won't get any speed. If it has too little friction, the friction actually is there to resist the spring. Right. Okay. So I'm going to count this. I'm going to do a swing test. And the swing test, what I want to see is about 4 grams of friction, and a swing test is actually amazingly accurate. So I want to count 5 to 7 swings. So 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 7.5 on the high end. That's acceptable. A little adjustment is fine. Now I'm going to go down through these. Okay. I've taken random samples all the way down. So 1, 2, 5, 6, 7. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Problem. 1, oh, I bumped it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17 and a half. I remember I want 5 to 7 swings. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 9, 10, 11, So what that tells me is that the hammer rail, the friction needs to be adjusted back to factory. And this is, again, it's just from expansion, contraction. And there's nothing broken here. This is just regulation.
Yeah.
And any piano is going to need some level of this stuff. So the hammer friction, what's called the hammer rail friction, should be adjusted either by repinning the hammer rail, or there are some other techniques that can. And what we actually need to see is an increase in friction across most of the piano. And so let me show you. You see this burble? What happens is when I hit a note, it doesn't check solidly. It kind of goes boing at the end. See that? It's called a double strike. And so what should happen is it should go and be caught like that. But instead it goes boing like that. So boing. See that? Now if I hit it really hard, now it checked. It's caught. All the hammers should check on soft playing, but they're all burbling. You see boing? See that?
Yeah.
That is because there's not enough friction in that pin to resist the spring.
Okay.
So the spring, and then combined with the fact the springs are too tight. So that's the next one. So the springs are a bit too tight. So you got not enough friction and too tight a spring. So the spring test, I'm going to put the hammer into check. Then I'm going to release the back check and watch the motion. Boom. It just... Okay, so the motion I want to see is, the good description would be slowly but positively. I don't want it to jerk.
Oh, okay.
I want it to...
Okay.
Slowly but positively. Not...
Okay.
So the springs are a little too tight. Springs are too tight, friction's too loose. So the springs need to be regulated, and that's done with a little wire bendy tool, and you go in here one by one and you do that spring test. You bend it a little. These are all bent by hand. You bend it a little bit, you recheck it until you get it all perfectly even. So that should be done. So next thing I'm looking at is let off and drop. So let off is the moment where the jack escapes from under the hammer. And that you can find that you feel it pop in your finger. So I'm moving, the jack is still under the hammer knuckle, still there, and then it releases. So still there, still there, still there, still. And the moment when you see it go down, and releases. It should release at 1/16 of an inch away from the strings, and then the drop position should be 1/16 drop. And what I'm seeing is there's about 1/4 of an inch of drop, which is a long way from 1/16 of an inch. So up, 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 up. That's pretty good, but then watch the drop.
Oh, okay, yeah.
It should only drop 1/16 of an inch. Up, 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 and drop. Up, up, and drop. So that needs to be regulated. So basically, and also the pitch, it's about 10-12 cents low flat. It's totally what we would expect. So it needs a pitch raise, needs a tuning.
We do.
Do that. The dampers, watch, okay, so the dampers, when I press the pedal, when I begin to apply the slightest bit of pressure to the pedal, every single damper should lift as one unit. You shouldn't have any early or any late. So now if you watch, okay, see this guy right here?
Yeah.
Late damper, not moving, and lots of them like that. This will affect the touch because one, the pedal, in order to pedal properly, everything has to move as one unit. So you can do a half pedal technique and various other things. But having uneven dampers also affects the touch weight because we always want an even action. We want to feel perfect evenness. And if the damper block, say the end of the key is here and you're pressing this part, right? So if the damper block is in its ideal position, the end of the key should pick up the damper block at halfway through its travel. So if it's going from here to here, it should pick it up halfway. So pick it up and then move the other half. Pick it up and move the other half. And that gives you, and if every single damper is timed that way, you'll have a more even touch weight. And this is one contributing factor in touch weight. There are many. So uneven dampers, if you have the key end picks up one damper here, and then another one picks it up late there, this one where it picks up early is going to feel much heavier under the fingers than the one that picks it up late will feel lighter. So it gives a feeling of unevenness. Is that me? That is me. I'm going to have to wait. So, needs pitch raise, needs a tuning, needs the dampers regulated, needs to have the blow distance regulated, needs to have the let off regulated, drop regulated, and something else called the dip and checks, which I won't go through all that. But basically, this is just the long way around it to tell you it needs to be regulated.
Okay.
And that's not uncommon.
Sure.
That's totally the norm. But I did want to go into detail and show you what regulation means.
Sure.
So this process, to go through all of these, to adjust the friction on the hammer rails, to regulate the dampers, to regulate the blow distance, the let off, the checks, etc., pitch raise it and tune it, costs the case is in excellent condition. The soundboard is in good condition. There are a couple of pressure ridges. They're not cracks. They're just pressure ridges. Totally common. And so it's in good condition. The pin block is stable and in good condition. It has a good bite. And the case is very nice. There are one or two very, very minor little spots in the case. Again, but this is beautiful. This has been very well kept. So I would consider this case to be in excellent condition. The bench is in really good condition, excellent condition. Don't worry about the squeakiness because it's only these 4 little bolts right here that can be adjusted in a matter of about a minute. So the squeak is not a concern at all and can be made to go away like that. So you'd be looking at a total price to bring this back to new condition. Okay. $475 to do the total regulation, and then add $50 to adjust the friction in the hammer rail without repinning. That's using a different technique, bolstering. And if you did repinning, that would jump that price about another $100. But it doesn't. I don't think you need to do the repinning, although it's some people would say repin it, but I think in this case, if you just kind of go through and bolster those. The cloth around, just using a needle and going in and lifting that wool felt, you can increase that friction to where it's acceptable. So $475, $525, $645, $705. So you're looking at, and then there's a little clicky stuff here. So really, you're looking at about $700+ to put it back in really good nick.
Okay.
Factor in, you're also, as you discuss this, keep in mind that with the stairs, your moving cost on this piano is going to be about, it's going to Vancouver.
Here's how we got it in here.
Side yard.
Out here, because the house level's off.
Oh, good.
They brought it up the side.
So not bad. That
no
saves
stairs.
No
Good.
stairs.
That saves some cash.
Yeah, and likewise, no stairs on our end either.
So you're looking at round about $300
Okay.
To move it.
to move it up to Vancouver, and approximately. I can't quote them. I have very good movers that I work with. I don't take any money out of it,
What-
but I do recommend them. A to Z.
I've heard about them many times. Yeah.
They're the only ones I use, and I move about 20 pianos a year with them.
Oh, do you?
Out of my shop. And I wouldn't let anybody else. And I don't get a dime to say that.
Yeah, sure.
They're licensed, bonded, insured, careful,
That's
courteous.
what we did.
Okay.
They won't tear up your floor.